Today I'm going to be talking about the 20 books that I read in January. So I'm going to go through this from my lowest to my highest rated. My lowest rated book of the month was a 1-star read, and that was Hidden Agendas, an Eye-Opener by Peter Breuer. This book was awful, and I thought there was a lot of things in it that were quite problematic about the treatment of mental health, and especially eating disorders and depression. Those were just a couple of things that I just thought had some questionable intentions behind it. Okay, so moving into our 2-star reads, we have one of my books that I had to read for my essay, which was Psychoanalysis, a Graphic Guide. It's just what it is. It says on the tin, it's just explaining psychoanalysis in a way that is a bit more visual, and, you know, helped me out with my essay, but nothing special. So Very British Problems by Rob Temple, I gave a 2.5 out of 5 stars. This was a reread. This is one of my 2 rereads of the month, which I'm trying to do each month, and it just didn't excite me or hit me in the same way that it did the first time. When I read it the first time, I was in a waiting room waiting to get a brain scan done to do with my seizures that I used to have, and so it did exactly what it needed to do, which was to give me that enjoyment and that comedy that I needed to lighten the mood. Whereas this time I was just like, you know, it's a fun kind of novelty book. That's kind of all I got from it, which is fine. But if you are British, I definitely recommend giving it a whirl. Next we have this absolutely massive book, which is Drawings of Bombed London by Hanslip Fletcher. Can't even say his name. Hanslip Fletcher. And it sort of looks like this. It's just got drawings in it. It was fine, but nothing special. I didn't feel any like connection to the art or anything like that, so it was just nice. Next we have As the Crow Flies and Other Poems by Adam Ditchburn, which is just this little mini sort of, I think 50 page poetry book. It was fine. There was a couple that I really liked. Actually, there was this one specifically that I actually like put a little tag in. So A London Sonnet was my favourite, but I have to say this stanza, the last stanza of The Boy with a Wolf for a Heart, it says, "A silent song is still a song, and in my silent song my heart will be hunting, howling for something, someone." Oh, beautiful. This one was really disappointing. I actually gave it a 2.8 out of 5 stars, but I was actually expecting it to be a 5-star read, and that is The Word Trove by Elias Vorpahl. And I love the concept of this, and what I want to say from the beginning is that I think this could be a 5-star read for so many people. It just didn't work for me. I just couldn't get engaged with it, but it's really, really sweet. It says, "In this book you meet a word that has lost its meaning. On its fantastic journey through the world of language, it attempts to rediscover its meaning all on its own." And it's adorable. I love it. But it didn't do it for me. Right, we're now going to be moving into our 3-star reads, and this is where most of the books sit, in that kind of average middly mark, and that's not really where I want to be, but it's kind of the reality of my reading. But the first one is Croydon in the 1940s and 50s. So this is an area that I know well, and it's got lots of pictures from the 1940s and 50s, as you'd probably guess, and it was a fun time, and that's all I have to say about it. Next we have Coping with Birth Trauma and Postnatal Depression by Lucy Jolin, which is a non-fiction book, and I work as a full spectrum doula. If you don't know what that is, I'll put a little description here, but I have to say that this was a real, like, I think it's like a beginner's guide. Like, if you know nothing about birth trauma and postnatal depression, go here, but if you're actually looking to know a bit more and to kind of expand your education, this just didn't do it for me. I was just reading it like, I know this stuff already, so it just didn't really work for me. This was another book that I read for my essay. It's The Interpretation of Dreams by Sigmund Freud, but I have to say this was the most interesting out of all of them. It's very tabbed here. yeah, it's interesting. It's very dated, but it's interesting to know what people used to think in the past. We have another graphic guide. This one is on Young, and this one I gave a 3.5. This is another essay book. This one is on Young, and again, it's one of the graphic guides. Again, did what it was meant to do, tabbed it up, worked a treat. Moving into the 3.5s, I have Lacan, and same as the other one, it was fine. Another 3.5 was the 50s photographs by the Daily Mail, and there were a couple that I was interested in, but I really thought this was going to be amazing. What I would say was really weird about this was that there was no kind of categorization, or they tried to and it just didn't translate well, because you'd have something really like fun and glamorous next to like a picture of war, and it just didn't seem coherent, but it also didn't match up as a huge contrast either. It was really weirdly laid out, and I didn't like that. My buddy read with Loney and Alicia this month was Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare, which is the first book in the Infernal Devices trilogy. And this one I gave a 3.8 out of 5 stars. I thought it was fine. I'm getting used to the characters a little bit because we're moving away from the Mortal Instruments, and I thought it was fun. I do think though that the representation of London was a bit weird to me as someone who lives in London. It came across like it was from an external perspective, not from actually living in London. But that's just me. Sorry, I forgot another 3.5, and that was Croydon Between the Wars, which is from the same kind of collection as the 40s and 50s one. This one was slightly better and more interesting, a little bit more diverse, and I actually could recognise a lot of the places. But other than that, it was just fun while it lasted. Moving into 4 stars, we have a bit of a random kind of quirky one, and that is How It Works the Dog, which is like a comedy book. It's supposed to be a take on the How It Works Ladybird books, but it's supposed to kind of take the mick out of it a little bit. But I love the artwork in this. It's so gorgeous. They're really, really cute. But it was really funny and really cute. 4 out of 5 stars. Another 4 stars was Break the Glass by Rachel Edwards, which was an essay that was included in the January Books That Matter box. And it was just really interesting. It was very reflective. It related to the pandemic, and I haven't read anything about the pandemic or a pandemic before. So it was interesting to have something to relate to, but something that was super short that I wouldn't then spiral and think about things too much. So this was just like perfect little medium. Another 4-star read we have is Addition by Tony Jordan, which was my second reread of the month. And this is a book about OCD. I first read this when I was trying to work out what was going on for me, and it was a very transformational book in me realising how bad my OCD was. I didn't find this triggering, did I? No, I didn't find this triggering because her OCD is very different to mine. I think a lot of the representation is very accurate. However, I would say that it won't be for everyone. Then we have Pillow Talk by Freya North, which I gave a 4.5 out of 5 stars, which is very surprising to me being a romance novel. By the end of it, I wanted to give it 5 stars. However, I couldn't bring myself to quite do that because there were times where it dragged or where it annoyed me, or the character said something where I was just a bit like cringy or a bit weird. I was just like, I'm not vibing with this. So I couldn't give it 5 stars for that reason, but it's still really, really strong. It's split between Yorkshire and London, which is really fun. There's a lot of backstory about the different characters' lives, which I really enjoy, and a lot of character growth. So really recommend it. Finally, we move into our 5-star reads. There are only 2 out of 20. So it's been a bit of a meh kind of reading month, even though I've read a lot. The quality of it hasn't been great, but the 2 5-star books that I read were absolutely amazing. So positives and everything. So we have Witchstruck by Victoria Lamb, which is so good. It's a historical fiction set in 1554. It has romance elements into it. I think romance is going to be quite strong in the second book, which I already have. I'm going to be reading it in February. But in this book, it's not that much of a thing. There's magic, there's royalty, there's action. It's very action-packed from the beginning. It just keeps flowing. I'm not making much sense because it was so good. Just read it. And finally, we have More Than This by Patrick Ness. Wouldn't recommend reading it right now with how the world is at the moment. Just going to put that out there, just so that we're all on the same page, because I don't think I should have read this right now. However, it was still absolutely wonderful. It's about a boy who dies, and he's trying to navigate this sort of world that seems like an afterlife. He's trying to work out what it is, what it means. And I'm not going to say anything more than that, because lots of things unfold. You constantly think you know what's going on, and then suddenly it will change. There's lots of cliffhangers at the end of chapters, if that's something you're interested in, and they are short chapters. So it ticked a lot of boxes for me. And it's like a lot of different genres thrown into one, because I'd say it's like a contemporary but also dystopian. There's some fantastical elements to it, some kind of sci-fi elements. It's all a bit crazy, but really, really solid. So these were the 20 books that I read in January of 2021. Bye.